Hello. It's a little chilly, and I thought today would be the perfect day for a delicious soup that we could put in the crock pot. You know, it's chilly, it's breezy, and there's a chance of rain. So let's face it, we're going to need something warm this evening for dinner. I'm going to prepare a delicious black bean soup, and I'm doing it using dried black beans. So I took the time overnight to soak those, and they're ready to go. I'm going to show you everything that goes into the soup. We're going to let it cook today, and this evening I'll let you take a look at what it tastes like. Well, what do you mean take a look? But I'll let you find out, and I'll tell you what worked and what didn't. So let's get to it. Now, I've got black beans in here that I soaked, and I poured in some boiling hot water. And that's where I'm going to start, with that boiling hot water. And I'm putting in about a quart of boiling hot water into our crock pot. And in addition to that, I'm going to let this come to a nice boil. Then, once it starts to cook, I'll start to add in, I want some onion flavor, I want some chili flavor, a little chili in there, and we'll start to add just a little more seasoning as we go. So I'm going to put this into the crock, give it about 2 hours, and in 2 hours we're going to start to add all the goodness into our black bean soup. Now, one thing to remember when you're cooking beans, initially you do not want to add any salt, because sometimes that salt will make the beans a little tougher. So I'm just going to add a pinch of baking soda so that the beans will release a lot of their gases now rather than show up later. All right, we've got our baking soda. I'm going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, just a little bit, and sprinkle that in, give it a good stir so that the beans will let go of their gas, and we'll be able to eat them peacefully. So there's our beans, and I'm going to go ahead and add I can go ahead and put in a few little red pepper flakes, because I do want a lot of flavor. And my red pepper flakes, just a pinch. I'm going to put those in. And I'm not going to put the chili seasoning in just yet, but I am going to add some of our basic house seasoning. And you know what that is. That's just onion powder, garlic powder, and black pepper. So for now, I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of that. And I already know I'm probably going to need more. But we're starting light, and as they cook, we can always come back and add more. And in fact, I'm going to add fresh garlic to this, because I think that's just going to give us the flavor that we need. Now, once these beans have really started to cook well, then I'm going to take out probably about a 1/2 cup to a cup, and I'm going to blend those, put them back in, so that we'll have a nice, hearty black bean soup. Now, I've added beans to my blender. Now we're going to get these blended up and then add them to our soup. This is my little bullet. It is so convenient. Okay. Let's see if they're ready. Oh yes. Let's take our spoon, make sure we've got them so they're nice and blended. We're going to add this to our soup, and this is going to act as our thickening agent. All right, let's get that done. All right. That's perfect. Now our soup is bubbling away, and this is just strictly the beans that we put in. And at this point, it's time to do a little more seasoning, add the rest of the vegetables. If we decide that we need more liquid, we'll do that as well. So let's get started. I love this little crock pot because I can do this. Take the top off, and it works quite nicely. Now, let's add some of those vegetables. I already had onions and red peppers prepped, so we're going to put all of those in. There's the onions. We're going to put in, I've got actually 2 small red peppers that I put in. Now, if you don't have any red peppers and you decide you want to use green because that's what you have, then you do that, or even the yellow or orange, whatever it is that you have. Red just happened to be what I had in my kitchen. Now, let me give all this a good stir. Now remember, we blended a portion of this, so as it cooks, that thickness is really going to take effect. All right, we've got the peppers in, we've got the onions in. I'm going to add in some shredded carrots, 2 cups of that. And remember, this is mine. Everybody doesn't put carrots in theirs, but I do, because it's all about the vegetable for me, in addition to the beans. Now, the one thing that I need to get out is my celery. We need some celery in this, so let's do that. I have 2 cups of celery. That was about 3 stalks, and I probably could have used 1 more, but I've got 3 stalks of celery in there. So let's give that a nice stir. Okay, now it's time to get the seasonings in. Let me make sure I get all the carrots. I don't want to waste. And I'm going to do a little cheating. First of all, I'm going to start with some cumin. Grab a teaspoon. And I'm going to start with about 1 heaping teaspoon of cumin. I'll sprinkle that in because, you know, beans love that little smoky flavor. Now remember, this is a Mexican dish, so it's got to be smoky. It's got to be flavorful. There we go. Find the top. I'm going to add some additional house seasoning at this point. That's our garlic powder, onion powder, and black pepper. Put another teaspoon in. I can smell that pepper. Yum. Okay. Now we had already put in some red pepper flakes. Now this is where I'm going to cheat. I happen to have some taco seasoning mix, and we talked about the fact that when you have seasonings, you really do need to use them, because if you don't, eventually they're going to go bad. So I'm going to have to use this, and it wasn't my first choice. I know it has salt, so I'm starting with a teaspoon, and I'm going to give that a stir. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to sprinkle in, let me use the shaker side. And I'm going to shake in a little more. Now, I don't know about you, but I like a little tomatoey flavor in mine. And what I'm going to do at this point, before I put that in, let's give it a little taste. Okay, that's good. It needs some salt, but I don't want to add that just yet. Now, I have some leftover tomato paste that I'm going to add in. It's a little chunk. That's about a cup of tomato sauce, actually, that I'm putting in, rather than putting in whole tomatoes or diced tomatoes. So that's going in, mainly because I needed to use it. All right, so that's going in. And I need some salt. This will not be good without some salt. So I'm going to start with about a teaspoon of salt. You know, we're dealing with beans, and beans have to have flavor. Beans, fresh vegetables. I'm going to let this cook down for a little while. I do have some chili powder, and I think I'm going to add just a touch of chili powder. Maybe about a teaspoon to start. And if we need to add more, we'll do that. Ooh. Yummy. Let everything come together. Our beans are looking good. Now I'm debating at this point. I like corn in my black bean soup. So I just may add at least a cup or two of corn into this. But I'm going to think about that because it still needs to cook. So let's let that cook, and we'll come back and make the final decision on the corn. But before we do that, I'm going to give it one more taste. Oh, the salt was just right. Okay. Now, let's put the top on it, and let's let it cook. I thought about whether or not I was going to add the corn, and I decided to go ahead and put in about 2 cups of frozen corn. So I'm going to sprinkle that in, and then I'm going to fill this cup with some vegetable stock and just add a little more liquid to the soup. This baby is set. It's going to continue to cook for another 2 hours. And at the end of those 2 hours, we'll be ready for dinner. Now, if you are sensitive to salt, you may want to cut back to a ½ teaspoon. But I know the big guy likes salt, so that's why I added 1 teaspoon to mine. Even though I could have handled it at basically a ½ teaspoon. Our kitchen is extremely busy today. And so because of that, I'm going to go ahead and get dinner started so that it can do its thing on the stove. We had that we made yesterday. And today, we're going to put together a garbanzo stew. And you could use garbanzos, you could use navy beans, but I think I'm going to stick with the garbanzos because of the fact that they have a higher protein count. And that's something that I need to get in, lots of protein. So I'm going to turn you down to the pot, show you what's in there. We're going to get it all sauteed, get everything into the pot, and it's going to simmer for about an hour. Now in our pot, you'll see that we have carrots, onions, and celery. And we're going to saute all of this in just a couple of drops of olive oil. And I'm only using a tiny bit. And once we get these nice and sauteed, we'll continue to add lots of seasoning. And then we'll put the stars of the dish into the pot. All right, I'm going to add a capful, just a capful of olive oil. And that's about a teaspoon in the center of the pot. And turn the stove on a medium-high. There we go. All of that needs to get nice and hot. And once that happens, we'll be ready to move on to the next step. I hope you can hear the simmering that's going on down in this pot. What we're going to do is start to get everything nice and mixed. All right, you know I'm going to add some house seasoning. Now we're going to add a couple of teaspoons of house seasoning. 1 and 2. We're also going to add in a real good dose of paprika. And this paprika has not been opened. Okay, we've got sweet paprika. And I'm going to add about a capful because we want quite a bit. And sprinkle that in. Now, I may have to go back and add just a touch more toward the end. But oh, that smells so good. And this is not smoky paprika. This is just regular sweet paprika. But we want all of this to get nice and soft. So that's going to take a few minutes. Be patient with it. Give it a good 8 to 10 minutes for everything to come together. We need some fresh garlic. So I'm going to add a heaping teaspoon of fresh garlic. We want lots of flavor, and a half. That was about 4 cloves of garlic that I've added in. Man, I wish you could smell this. It smells wonderful. All right. Now, I'm going to add in some Cajun seasoning. I'm going to be a little careful with it initially just because I'm not sure how salty it is. So I'm going to start with a teaspoon. And then if I need to add a little more, we will, because you know beans are going to soak up a lot of the flavor. Let's give this a chance to cook. There we go. Now, I don't know if this happens in your house, but the big guy came through and voiced his opinion as to what types of beans he wanted in our Cajun stew that we're putting together. And he wanted navy beans rather than the garbanzo beans. So guess what? We are going to add the navy beans to our stew. So let's keep cooking. Let's keep sauteing because it smells amazing in this kitchen. I wanted you to see the consistency of what we're doing. So everything is just bubbling away down there. We're going to add a little vegetable stock in, and once we've done that, we'll start to add the navy beans. We're going to be using 3 cans of navy beans, as well as the potatoes. We're going to add about 2 cups of potatoes, maybe a little more, depending upon the size of your family. And then we'll add in more liquid as needed. I have the 3 cans of navy beans that I'm going to add in. They've been rinsed and drained. Everything nice and mixed. Now later, I already know I'm going to have to adjust the seasonings because we're adding additional items into our mix. Okay, there's our beans. Let's get some stock in. And I have a piece of a box that's here. So we're going to put in, that was probably about a cup of stock. Let's see what that does. It gives us a little start, but not enough for us to be able to cook the beans and the potatoes in. So let me get the potatoes, and then we're going to top it off with the stock that we need. Okay. Now, you know I like to prep my potatoes in advance. I had them already cut, nice and diced. And I have a few more, but I'm not sure I'm going to need all of them. So let's look at it and see. That looks pretty good. But I want this to be very hearty because after all, it's a stew. Now, I could certainly add more potatoes if I wanted, but I think that's a good mix right there. So let's get some more stock. I'm going to cover all of this with the stock. This is vegetable stock. Because our beans are going to soak up a lot, as well as the potatoes are going to need the liquid in order to cook. Now, there we go. Looks good. I think I better give it a taste and see how we're doing at this point. Oh, that's good. And that Creole seasoning, it's just perfect. Now, I'm going to add just a tad bit more garlic, just because I like garlic. And I think that will do it. I want a little more garlic flavor. If you want to add some hot sauce or red pepper flakes, you can certainly do that, and I know the big guy likes that, but I'm going to let him add that on his bowl rather than mine as well. Okay, I'm going to put a top on this and let it simmer now for about 40 minutes. There we go. Now we're ready to add our last ingredient, and that's going to be spinach. So I have spinach. I'm going to take it by the handful and just break it up as I drop it in. Just give it a little twist and turn. And drop it in so you won't have such large pieces of spinach in your stew. And once we've done that, we'll give it a good stir. Oh yeah. Now how pretty is this? Our stew looks amazing. We're going to let this bubble for about 15 more minutes and we'll be ready for dinner. There we are. Our spinach is cooked and we are just about ready to serve our bowls. This is a very hearty, filling dish, and one that I think your family will love. If you happen to have some hearty bread, that would be great. If you even liked a glass of wine, you could have that with it, or, glass of tea, glass of water, little Coke, whatever it might be. But this is delicious. So, and it smells amazing in here. Now, let's get ready to serve our bowls. Now this bowl is going to be for the big guy. And remember, this is a nice, hearty stew. Now I put potatoes in it because that's what the recipe called for. And you could certainly add, leave the potatoes out and do rice. But we're going with potatoes tonight. And there's his bowl. I'm going to add some green onions on top. So he can enjoy that. And, I'm going to take the bottle of hot sauce because he's probably going to want a little hot sauce on top of his stew. There's bowl number one. All right, it's time to get Mama's stew ready. So, it's my stew. I'll put in a few green onions. Sprinkle them over the top. There we are. So let's get ready to enjoy the first couple of bites together. Now last night the kitchen got really noisy, so we did not get to have dinner together. But we're going to have some of this stew because it looks amazing. You can see how hot it is. I need to let this cool just a second, because what I don't want to do is to burn my mouth. The flavor is perfect. Now, I think you and your family will certainly enjoy this stew. And it is a stew, as you saw, it's quite versatile. We could have used garbanzos, which it originally called for, but instead we decided to do it with white beans. So, enjoy your evening, enjoy dinner with your family, and happy cooking, because it's fun right here in the kitchen of Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme.